What happens when you combine the healing mechanic from Hollow Knight, the core combat from Blasphemous, and the roguelike weapon drops from Hades? You get Moonscars, a new dark fantasy metroidvania souls-like developed by Black Mermaid and recently released on all platforms. I've spent over 25 hours with the game and wanted to give it a quick review as I feel like it's worth talking about. As a huge fan of Blasphemous, I've been searching for newer games that might be inspired by that modern classic, and Moonscars is really the first one I've played that attempts to take up the mantle. While it certainly reaches for such lofty heights of similar acclaim, the game doesn't quite make it to the same degree Blasphemous does, but it does come close enough to be a worthwhile experience. First, let's go over the positive things that Moonscars does right. The combat. The combat is absolutely incredible. They nailed this above all other aspects of the game. From mixing in heavy attacks to knock enemies into spikes, to using hex special weapons to slow them down, to satisfying parry counter mechanics, the game has it all. Further enhancing the combat is the spite system, which allows you to choose one of 3 random additional passive abilities every so many minutes. Defeat more enemies, increase your spite, choosing up to a max of 5 additional attributes. While the spite attributes reset upon death or whenever you unlock a new bonfire mirror, it's an incredibly brilliant feature to propel engagement and motivate you to keep playing. Aesthetics. The dark tone and the bleak atmosphere are excellently crafted. One really impressive aspect is the minimalist art style, which is predominantly black and white featuring accents of red. This is a bit of a double-edged sword though, as I'll expand upon in a minute. But when considering the entire game overall, the consensus is that Black Mermaid managed to do more with less and succeeded in their minimalistic approach. Duration. Moonscars is approximately as long as it should be. For your first run, expect it to take about 6 to 8 hours, maybe more if you're struggling or if you get lost. For subsequent runs, expect around 5 hours in total. Given the art style may not be engaging enough for some people's tastes, the game doesn't overextend its welcome. It provides just enough challenge for just the right amount of time, and I really respect when a game developer respects the player's time. Now let's take a look at a few criticisms where I feel like Moonscars falls a bit short. Balancing. There is an amulet you can purchase before the first boss that basically turns this game into easy mode. When equipped, you move slower, but receive less damage from enemies. And by less damage, I mean by an incredible amount. Without this amulet, you're basically a glass cannon, and in my opinion, receive too much damage from enemies by default. I feel like there's a sweet spot somewhere between the current amount and when the amulet is equipped that would put the default difficulty for this game somewhere right between extreme and a cakewalk. Otherwise, most new players will quickly adapt the amulet as a default strategy once they discover it. If players are manually offsetting the difficulty of the game 30 minutes in, then it wasn't really balanced from the get-go. Also, you can't super dash across chasms correctly while this amulet is equipped, as it actually reduces the speed of the super dash. This means you have to unequip it to super dash properly. It makes it extremely annoying to deal with the chasm sections once you get there. Enemy variety. There are only about 10 distinct enemy types in Moonscars, and towards the end of the game, fighting them becomes a bit tedious. While the game starts off feeling like you'll expect to see new enemies per area, those expectations get reset by the time you hit the 3rd area, the depths, and beyond. This relates directly with the aforementioned balancing issues, as you'll quickly become so proficient at dispatching each enemy type that you may not even die across your entire playthrough. The overall challenge certainly plateaus early on, as even the first boss is the most difficult one in the entire game. Earth and Bowels. This was the only area in the game I really had a problem with, both in terms of visual aesthetics and gameplay. There's just so much drab gray on screen that I found it extremely unappealing visually, and the fact that this is the longest area to get through didn't help either. This criticism pairs with the enemy variety, as the Earth and Bowels nets out to clearing dozens of rooms featuring slightly different arrangements of the same enemies over and over again for the better part of an hour. This area could have been cut in half, and the game would have been better for it. The other major sin of this area introduces these poison enemies, which literally slow combat to a halt. Yet another aspect of the game which may be affected by the slow movement amulet, but as you approach these enemies you become poisoned, and you move so fucking slow. When it comes to the combat system, especially when relying on a good parry counter mechanic, the combat becomes more about maintaining a rhythm than anything else. Learning when to parry and attack creates a certain beat that carries the momentum of the player, and introducing any enemy to slow that rhythm to a crawl is just a bad idea. It makes this already tedious area that much more irritating to get through. Overall, and even though one of the final areas of the game was a bit of a slog to get through, I'm going to give Moonscars a 7 out of 10 and fully recommend it. Despite its flaws, the combat system will keep you engaged right up until the end. Above all, Moonscars is a fun game to actually play. If you're a Blasphemous fan, this one is really a no-brainer, and for $20, you really can't go wrong. For anyone else who's still on the fence, wait for a sale and pick it up for 15 bucks, but definitely add it to your wish list. What did you think of Moonscars? Did you agree with my criticisms or were they way off the mark? Let me know down in the comments. And for more Moonscars content, check out my playlist featuring a full walkthrough and important side quest overview. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy!